Hello, everybody, and good morning to you. Welcome to another episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. You guys already know who it is. This is Tony Lynch, and we are your number one podcast for bringing conversations around death, dying, grief, trauma, mental health, and all the things that come along with that. Because in our world, we know that grief is a shared human experience, and the best way to heal is to share your conversations to help other people. Now, we're doing exactly that. And of course, we have another amazing guest for you guys. We're talking about grieving in different cultures. You guys already know because the more you know, the better we can support those individuals that are actively grieving without being misunderstood. And today we're going to have an amazing conversation from another amazing guest. Now, before I bring her up here, I would like to say that if this is your first time tuning in, do me a favor, head on over to that YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. And we're celebrating our 401 subscribers. So thank you guys for all your support and keep bringing it, keep subscribing, keep getting us out there, and let's reach a lot more people. Okay. Now, before I bring on my next guest, I would like to say that this is for educational purposes only. I had the chance to talk to my next guest, and she is freaking amazing. And she has an amazing story with some amazing experiences. So, you guys, if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section, and we'll be sure to answer them as we go. Now, without further ado, I'm bringing on my guest. I can't wait. Haley, how you doing?
Good. Glad to be here.
Man, same here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right. Now, before we get started, tell people who you are, where you're from, and about the work that you do. Ooh, excuse me.
So my name is Haley. I am originally from Portland, Oregon, born and raised. Had my children there, homeschooled, home birthed, and then my stars, it's been almost 10 years ago since we moved to rural Missouri. And when we moved here, I became acquainted with the Amish, and they asked me to start being their taxi driver.
Okay. Now, how was that experience? I mean, you moving from Portland, Oregon, and you moving to Missouri, and being a part of a different culture. How was that?
Yeah, it was culture shock.
Share some of that culture shock with us. What was it like? Because when you think about Portland, Oregon, it's busy. There's a lot of things going on, etc. Right? And then so there's a transition, but you also had a life before you went there as well, right? Having children and all of those different things.
Yeah, my children, their nickname for Missouri is Misery. They were really upset at moving here and moving to the rural area, away from the mountains, away from the ocean, away from Portland and all the things going on in Portland, away from kind of the hippie culture. They're very mainstream out here, I guess, very redneck. A little bit wild, I guess.
A little bit wild.
Yeah, a little bit wild, a little bit rough and tough out here.
Yeah. So now, you and I talked, right? Because you and your husband went out there. You was offered a free house.
We were.
Now,
my ex-husband. Yeah.
Your ex-husband.
Yeah, the father of my
How did that come about?
How did that go about? So, okay, well, here's something. Because we homeschooled and we home birthed and we raised our children in a very natural way, a lot of people felt threatened by that, I suppose, or maybe afraid of that, even in Portland, which kind of surprised me. So we actually had Child Protective Services called on us a couple of times, and it scared the daylights out of us. And my husband had struggled hardcore to provide for our large family. I don't know if this will date me, but there was this publication called the Tightwad Gazette. There were like several books of the Tightwad Gazette in the series. And so I became really, really, really good at living on a shoestring because I had to, because I was going to raise my children and I was going to be at home with them. And so we had to become very resourceful to meet our needs. But anyway, Child Protective Services kept coming, and we were living in my parents' basement because my husband was not working. And I got on this, I'm LDS Mormon. So because CPS was coming after us and investigating us and doing whatever they were doing, I questioned a lot of things like freedoms and what rights do they have. And so I found this LDS Freedom Forum, and I remember I was awake in the middle of the night, couldn't sleep. My youngest was, I don't know, she was 1.5 years, 2 years old. And there was a guy on there, and he's like, well, I just feel like I need to buy a house for a family in need. And I live in Missouri, and we'll crowd fundraise for the house. So I got on there and I said, well, we're not homeless. We're living in my parents' basement. Like, this is our situation, but we really need to change. You know, we just, so they bought the house for us and then we moved here.
Okay. Okay.
That's kind of how that happened. It was an act of God, I think. We're supposed to be here.
Nice. Now, did CBS finally leave you guys alone, or
Well,
did they try to mess with you more?
so what I learned as I studied, and it's good because I'm a homeschool mom, right? I need to teach my children history and what our freedoms are and how to exercise our liberties in America. And I learned that you don't have to allow them in unless they get a warrant. So when they came those 2 times, they didn't like me very much because I said, you know, if there's a problem, just go ahead and prove it. Go get a warrant. And they never could get a warrant. And so they would like harass me and park in front of our house, you know, but they couldn't, without that piece of paper and my permission, they were powerless. So
Yeah. So a lot of people give in to CPS, right? I was a victim. I was a victim, but I didn't do it. It was my son's mom who did it. And they were like, "You're going to do this," and I was like, "No, don't. They can't do that, right?" Which we've talked about. You know, I think I talked about it a little bit to you. That was the reason. You know, although they won't admit it, that was start of how I lost my son.
Oh gosh.
So it was, you know, just to put that a little bit out there. It started off, they threatened to take him away unless we put him on medication. I told his mama, said they can't do that, etc. She folded, and eventually they put him on medication. And eventually it started off, his pharmacist mixed his medication wrong. He had an overdose. And then 9 months later, he passed away from unknown causes. Although they couldn't prove that that's what had caused it, we all know it happened, right? Children don't survive overdoses like this. I think when they did the test, it was 1,000. It was 1,000 times more than what was actually recommended. So I think his actual dosage on the bottle was 0.002 milligram, milligrams, micrograms per milligram, and it turned out to be 1,000 milligrams. Yeah, and so per milliliter. Yeah, and so that's what it was. And so I was like, man, you know, and listening to you, I wanted her to just stand up and go, no, you
Right.
cannot do this, right?
Right.
And so, and I say that for anybody out there struggling with DHS or CPS and things like that, stand up for yourself, please.
Right.
You know, don't become a victim. Don't let them just bully you, because they can't do anything. As Haley just said, they can't do anything unless you give them permission or they have a warrant. Let them prove that you have a problem, right? And so, you know, I don't want more people to understand that. That's why I put that out there. Now,
Yeah.
moving to and being around the Amish, how did you begin to have a relationship with them and begin to become their taxi driver, right? Because it's crazy. Because when we think about the Amish culture, you normally see on TV they riding around on horse and buggy, and you know what I'm saying. And they do. I love the fact that they do a lot of natural things like build their own homes, and you know, I love the fact that you know they don't rely on electricity the way that we or technology the way that we do. Although I do know they do have technology. I know all about Rumspringer and all of that stuff, right? You know, but yeah, what do you? How was that?
So growing up in Portland, right away from the Amish, there was a community in Oregon years and years and years and years ago, way before our time, but there haven't been for a long time. But I had always heard these romanticized ideas about the Amish, and I really didn't know them. But when I moved here, a woman who since moved away named Iris befriended me, and she's like, "Do you want me to show you the Amish stores?" And I'm like, "Sure, whatever that means," because I needed to. When I moved here, I needed to gather resources. Right, I had a really good resource for cheap food back in Portland, and I needed that again out here. So the Amish stores were one of those sources, and the Amish themselves were one of those sources of affordable, healthy food. So she brought me to an Amish store, and I was introduced to a woman named Sarah. And one time she didn't have what I was looking for at her store, mineral salt. Actually, it was my friend that was looking for this mineral salt. And so Sarah directed us to another Amish house and pulled up in my big pickup truck to this other Amish house. And they just sold salt from their house. Like, they did not have a store. And this guy, he saw me and he saw my big truck and he was out milking his goats and he had never seen me before because I'd never been there before, but he stopped milking his goats and he ran out to the pickup truck and he introduced himself and he's like, wow, nice pickup truck. I had a big diesel pickup truck, you know. And he's like, you want to drive for the Amish? We need taxi drivers. And I said, I don't even know what you mean, dude. And he's like, do you have a piece of paper? I'm like, nope. So he ran inside his house, got a piece of paper, got a pen, came back out. He wrote his name and his address on this little piece of paper and he gave it to me. And he's like, well, you know, we'd like you to drive for us. We pay really good, 75 cents a mile, which sucks. Okay. For big diesel pickup truck. But then I took a piece of paper and he ran off back to milk his goats. And I went home and I'm like, what in the world was that? And there's a guy that he is since deceased, go to church with him, the Mormon church. And so I knew he was a taxi driver. So I asked him like, what's going on? And why is there no phone number? And like, how would I contact this guy even if I wanted to drive him? And he's like, well, you know, they only have one little teeny phone shack in their whole community of like, I don't know, 60 or 80 families. They only have one little phone shack and there's no answering machine. So there's really no way to contact them unless you drive out there. But if they had my phone number, then they could call me. But that's how the idea got planted. And I had a maxi van because I have 6 kids. Right. So I was set up, right, to drive the Amish big truck, big van, ready to go. That's about all you need.
Okay. I think that's cool. I think that is so cool. Because here you are, you move from one area to the next, and all of these things start to lay around, you know. And now, let's get into some of the cultural things that you've experienced, right? You know, living amongst them, adjusting to this new lifestyle, having children, but watching how they deal with loss, right? You and I talked a little bit about that. Let's dive deeper into that if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I can tell you, okay, this isn't death, but I have a really powerful experience. At least it was powerful for me. I remember when I first started driving from the community that asked me to start driving. They are super, super, super low order. Like they don't have running water in their house. They only bathe once a week. They aren't allowed to hire drivers for work. You know, if they want to work, they have to drive their buggy. So they really can't do construction or anything like that. And they're very poor because of the rules that they choose to live by. I remember we just got back from a trip to Wisconsin and we pulled up to the Mast household. And the Masts, they had, I'm trying to remember, like 16 kids, I think, 14 or 16 kids. They had a lot of kids. And I had the bishop in the community with me. And Miss Mast, she was like crying and her husband was crying. And I had never seen Amish cry. And the bishop's like, you know, do you mind if can we just stay here for a little bit? They need to talk to me. And I said, of course, you know, whatever you want to do. So I just sat in my van and they were just outside the van talking and crying. And the Amish, they don't show emotion in front of anybody. I don't think I've ever seen Amish cry since then. And I was like praying for them. I wasn't sure what was going on. I thought that maybe one of their many children had died. And to them, it was worse than death what happened, because one of their sons actually had left in the middle of the night, and he had left the Amish and gone to King City to become English. And to them, that's worse than death. Really, it's worse than death because their child is alive, but in their religion, they have to cut their child off because that's their belief. So it's worse than him being dead, because at least if he was dead, he would be with God. But here he's out in the world living this worldly life that is very scary to them. Yeah. So they were absolutely just heartbroken over it.
So I would never have thought about that, because, you know, most families, rural families, that, you know, when our kids get of age, we already trying to kick them out the house. Like, go out to the world, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're 18, going out there, let life beat you up a little bit, and you know what I'm saying? And we happy. I mean, don't get me wrong, we do grieve when they leave home, but man, we take a breath. You know, we're like, look, no more eating my food. No more taking over I ain't got to fight with you no more. No, go on out there. Go on, right? But I guess in a way, I can relate to that as well, especially if it's part of your belief system, right? You know, and who am I to say how people should feel about that? Because I do speak from an experience aspect when it comes down to child loss, and I like to always respect people and what they believe, and like in situations like that, I can't see the other side where I go. I can see it, right? There's maybe people out there that may be like struggling with the idea of that or something like that because they may be like, oh, it's not the same. Well, it actually is. It really is, right? Because as parents, the last thing that we want to do is let our children go, although we talk smack, right? We're like, no, go out there, get you three, four jobs. That way I don't have to see you. But we love it when they come home. We love it when they come home and raid the refrigerator, okay? We do. We love it when they come home and, and try to take over the team. We love all of that stuff, right? We may not say it, we're really good about you make me sick, all that good stuff, right? So let's dive deeper into a lot more of your experiences because you said something, and I want to dive into it a little bit more because I think when we talked the first time, I mentioned to you that it's like that all over the place. It's very rare that you will see men cry, right? Unless that individual is not afraid, unless that individual is emotionally intelligent, not afraid to express themselves. And that's a healthy thing. That is definitely a healthy thing. But, the cultural differences is not so different. They are. That we as a society, we don't allow ourselves the, the space, the opportunity to grieve, right? And so we become emotionally voided, which is not healthy at all. So let's talk about it a little. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, the Amish, as I've spent more time with them, I've noticed that that's a pattern. They just don't. I mean, they laugh. They are some of the funniest people I've ever met. They are always cracking a joke, trying to pull one over me, just laughing. They really love life. But when it comes to grief and loss and hard things, they just I don't know. Have you heard of Stephen R. Covey? He does like the seven. What is it? The 7 habits of highly
Yes,
successful
yes, yes,
people,
yes.
highly
I
successful
know that
family,
reading the book.
urban teens,
Yeah.
like all those things, right? So I've read those and read them with my children. And one of his habits is to just when I can't remember how he says it, but I remember he tells this story of he's hiking with his kids. He's got a lot of kids, right? Because he's Mormon. So he's hiking with his kids and they're all complaining and whining and just want to quit and just making it a miserable experience. And he's like, okay, you know what we're going to do? We're just going to stop and we're just going to, set the timer for 5 minutes and just get it all out. Just complain. Just get it all out. Whatever you want to say, you want to stomp your feet, yell, scream, whatever you want to do, get it out. And then let's go on. And the Amish are like that. Like they just, feel it, boom, go on. And I was looking up something yesterday and I found an Amish proverb. And I love to collect the Amish proverbs because it kind of shows what the Amish believe. And this one is pray, hope, and don't worry. So that's kind of how they deal with life and with hard things. They pray, they hope, and then they just go on. You know,
Hmm.
that makes sense.
It does. It does. And it opens up the doors for questions, right? To pray and hope, I can agree with. Just go on. It's a lot more difficult than what people think, right? And I think it takes a certain mindset to just go on. And again, this is from because I am a grief coach, and diving into the world of grief, even with my own struggles. I, I can't push back on it because it's not my belief system, but I can say, you know what? I don't agree with the moving on part. I agree. I would often tell people like sit with it, experience it, surrender to it, allow yourself to feel what you need to feel. Then you move with it, and eventually, while it begins to change, and things like that. Adjust yourself accordingly so you can take the time to heal. Because I've seen communities where the people aren't healed, right? And I've seen the destruction that comes behind that. So maybe it's just for me. I just want to have a better understanding.
No, I get it. That's their culture. I agree with you as well to heal. But I also agree that there's a point when you're like, okay, enough. Kind of go on, got to keep living. And the Amish believe that this life, well, some believe that this life is meant to be really hard and a struggle. And the more, like, especially these low order Amish, the one whose son ran off and they were crying, right? They believe that the harder you struggle, the harder life is, the closer to God that you get and the higher chance you have of getting into heaven. And so honestly, they kind of pride themselves in having a really hard life and making things more difficult for themselves on purpose. And I've heard this from ex-Amish, so not making this up, right? But so that might explain why they're like, okay, we aren't going to allow our tough time to grieve. We're just going to buck up and go on.
Yeah, you said a couple things. Um, I like the fact that you said that does come a point where you have to move on. I'm have to just say this, right? And I mean no disrespect when I say this,
Oh,
but I'm moving on when I say this. All right, there's no moving on in grief. Grief goes with you no matter what. And then again, I'm speaking from my own experience, right? You know what I'm saying? Because I don't wish some of the losses that I've had to experience on anyone. I really don't. Right? Those things they kind of stay with you. Grief is part of who you are.
yeah.
Again, this is my opinion and everything like that. And I
Yeah.
always want to make sure that I respect everybody and their beliefs and how you want to maneuver those things. And we all have our own way of doing things, right? But that's probably one that I've seen people get in a lot of trouble with
Mhm.
when they try to in my world man up, right?
Mhm.
I've seen so many people, so many other men kill themselves or take their lives. Trigger warning for everyone. Unalive themselves because some of the losses that we experience it's pretty heavy, and right. And when you don't have the mental or emotional fortitude to deal with those things, it has no outlet, and so we figure out other things to numb the pain. And sometimes when you get so used to numbing the pain, it can take you down a real dark rabbit hole. So and again, these are just my thoughts, my opinions, just to add to what you're saying, but also take into consideration, your thoughts and opinions. And I will always want to remain respectful of that.
No, I think you're right. And I think you do make a good point because I have an ex Amish friend and she's very prominent. She wrote a book. She's got a movie, PBS, it'll be out this fall. But
Hmm.
she was raised in the lowest order of the Amish called the Trooper Amish. And a lot of that culture is, there's just a lot of abuse and a lot of hiding of the abuse.
Right, right.
And so she, and they don't like they deal like she thought that growing up that parenting was emotionally distant, right? Her parents would not hug her, hold her, comfort her, tell her that they love her. They would beat her. Okay. And
Mm,
if things happened, it was her fault. Very, very, very destructive, unhealthy way to grow up. But some, so she's had to spend decades healing after that
right.
upbringing, and some Amish have killed themselves, and that's not something that people really know about, but because they don't work through that, they just, like you said, they just can't handle it, and the only way to get rid of it is to end it, and so they have.
So there really is very slight cultural differences when it comes down to dealing with that. Okay, I understand. I have a better understanding of it now. Thank you for sharing that. Now and the other thing. Now I do. Here's one thing that I never thought that I would have to agree with and things like that until you actually go through the struggle. Um, because I can say that in my hardest struggles is when I called out the most, right? And it gave me a chance to hear what was being relayed to me. And it became a guiding light. And I said, I don't want to have to struggle to hear you, right? And so I developed the technique. So at some point, I don't want to struggle that much. I'm not. I don't want to keep setting myself up. Life just kind of did it to me. It was like, oh yeah, you think it's going to be easy? No, right? It was one of those. I heard a joke one time, um, so I'm kind of twisted around a little bit. Life hit me with so many rights. I was waiting for a left. I was like, look, we you don't have to keep punching me in my mouth, okay? You know, and then from there, it just became an MMA wrestling match, and I almost lost. Okay, I almost lost. Life beat me up a little bit. So now, when it comes down to the struggle, I do love a good, I do love a good struggle because it teaches us, right? It teaches us that hey, in these struggles, you can learn, you can build a sense of self, right, during these times. You get battle tested, so to speak. And as a young man out into the world, I always encourage these young men to go out here, go out into the world and get battle tested. Let life punch you around a little bit, but learn how to get back up, right? Learn how to respond and not having an emotional reaction to when life throws you the anvil, right? Learn how to move, learn how to develop some skills. And I totally agree. Like in life has so many curves, we don't know what to do when it's straight roads. Right, exactly. And I don't think that's the way it's supposed to be. I think if you're on a course, if the road is straight, you're on the wrong path.
Hmm.
You look, it took me a long time to figure this out, Haley. It really did, right? Because I was so used to figuring things out. I knew what to look for. I knew how to maneuver, right? I knew how to move myself within the shadows, right? And the challenge came is when the road dropped off and I didn't see the curve coming. And I hit that proverbial wall, boom, and I had to figure out how to get back on that path again. But what it did though, it it helped me to learn not only how to get rid of the things that I didn't need, but it actually opened up the doors for me to wanting to learn more about what was going on. So yes, in those struggles and things, I was closer to God or source
Yeah.
or universe, whatever it was. I was closer because that's one of the times where I wanted to give up the most.
Mm-hmm.
Where I was just like, I'm waving the white flag. I'm waving it. I'm ready to get up. I'm tired of getting punched around a little bit. Now, at some point, I you don't want it to keep happening, right? You do want to be able to live a good life and things like that. It takes a little bit of time, depending on the lessons that you have to. So I want to get your thoughts on that.
Get my thoughts on the lessons to learn.
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%. From the Amish perspective, I'm not sure what they think about that because they have a very different view of, I guess, life. Like
Hmm.
I said, they think this, especially the low order, they think this life is meant to be a struggle and that you just have to push through it and then you have peace and glory in the end if you just get through it. And I have never heard the Amish, and I've been with communities all over the country of varying levels of, oh, I don't know what you say, just varying orders, right? And I've never heard them talk that way. So that would probably be a new idea to them, honestly. But
I
I
mean,
agree.
it's no,
Yeah.
no. Again, this is a learning.
Bless you.
This is a learning segment for I think for a lot of the people that are listening in right now. And I want to say thank you guys for tuning in on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube and all the other platforms that you guys are listening in. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comments section. Because this is I love being able to talk about the culture and how they do things, and is there a huge difference between how we grieve and how the Amish grieve, right? And these are things that we don't think about, but you have to remember, grief is a universal thing. We're all going to approach it in different ways, so it's better to learn and educate yourself so we know how to support each other. All right. So now, can you share some other experiences that along those lines, right? Because here's one thing that I didn't hear you say about mental health, right? Um, or anything about dealing with trauma or addiction and things like that. Are those things like something that's talked about or seen?
In the Amish? Oh
Hmm.
my stars. Yeah, so if you want to get to know the Amish and have your misconceptions shattered, you drive taxi for them because you stay in their homes and you're with them when they have their weddings and their deaths and their births, and you learn all kinds of things that go on in the community that outsiders don't know, that the Amish are very human. And yes, they struggle with those things. And it was kind of a shock for me to learn that. And then to share that with my family and friends back in Portland, they just couldn't believe the things I was telling them. Yes, the Amish get into addictions. And my most recent experience, and I will not say, I'll make up names to
Hmm.
protect them,
Please,
but
please.
there was a young father in my community, and he has struggled with pornography addiction. And you're probably wondering, how would an Amish guy have a pornography addiction, right? They don't have technology, but sometimes they do get a hold of smartphones. And there is a driver in our area, at least one that I know of, that has showed the Amish men, like when he's been driving them, inappropriate things. I've heard this from some of the women too, inappropriate things on his phone. And so this one particular young father got hooked, and it got him into some trouble. And I have taken him to counseling. The Amish do have a joke. The joke is, the farther away you go for therapy or doctoring, the better it'll be. So 12-hour drive, right? Took, took him to Colorado. He spent a week out there with, the Amish have their own practitioners. So there was this woman that was considered an Amish doctor, and she did have some formal training, and she would do these like electrode things on his head. So he was out there for a week doing that to try to cure his pornography addiction. And then within the last few months, I was driving actually their newborn baby down to Kansas City for doctoring, and we were visiting. And I learned that they had gone to this place in Texas, and it's called Deliverance Ministries. And I'm like, oh, tell me about that. Deliverance Ministries. What does that mean? So some of the Amish believe that if you have an addiction like to pornography, that you are possessed of the devil. And so they have this book, and it's called, I think I have it on my bookshelf back there, and I've read most of it. I think it's called like when the pigs move in, or when the swine move in, written by this guy who started Deliverance Ministry. So they spent a week down in Texas. A lot of Amish go down there, I guess, from the more modern communities, and they have these dark spirits cast out of them. Like, so those are a couple of ways that I've seen. One guy who has since left the Amish, but I remember I was stopping by, he wasn't living with his mom, but I stopped by his mom's house because we were friends. And I see him sitting at the dining room table. He's a young man, and he has this IV in his arm, and literally this mason jar, and he's pumping blood out of his body because he had struggled with some addictions and some mental health issues. And that's what someone told him to do, to cure it. I'm like, what?
Whoa.
So yeah, I can't unsee that.
No, not at all. Oh my God. Like, okay. Okay. All right. No, I can't. Now you got me doing the whole visual thing. Like,
Sorry.
no, you're fine. You're fine. I'm just like, how am I supposed
And
to
you're
take
having your
that? Like,
breakfast and thinking about blood on the table.
yeah, like, hold on, you got a mason jar. Are we donating blood? I mean, what are we doing?
No, he was just trying to cleanse. I don't know, but some doctor, I don't know what kind of doctor it was, English or Amish, told him he should do that to help his mental health. So he did it.
Did it help?
He still has struggles.
Okay. I'm just curious because I don't think I've ever heard that one before, but
Mhm.
it's good to know. Definitely good to know. So if I ever see somebody doing that, I go, "Oh, he's casting out demons or something," man. And at that present moment in time, I think I'm just going to mind my own business, you know.
Yeah.
um, wow. Okay. Okay. So that one's new. That one's new. And far as therapy and everything, I do agree. If you're struggling with addiction and things like that, depend. Look, I know we got young men out here, and I know young men go do what young men do. I don't really have any words for that. I would just say, hey, at some point, think about your life choices, right? Just please think about your life choices and make good choices in this world. If you do find yourself struggling with any form of addiction, seek therapy, get support, surround yourself with other people that are going through that, um, and learn some tools, right? Learn some tools. Now, share some more of your experience because I find this fascinating. This is truly fascinating. But I'm also connecting the dots and how similar we are as a people, as humans, um, in these different experiences, in these different walks of life.
As far as addictions go with the Amish, honestly, that's I mean, there was one woman who was a hypochondriac. She had had 9 sons, and
Mm.
she was thinner than I am. And I don't know if that's an addiction or not, or if that's maybe a mental health issue.
It can be a little bit of both, right? Um, so when you say that, we look at those people who are anorexic. They always have a body dysmorphia, right? So to speak. They always go, oh, if they see the any bit of skin that's loose or something, oh, I'm getting fat, right? So there's a huge mental health issue there. There's a huge mental health issue, right? Because then there comes the multiple ways that people do that, right? They eat to make you feel good about them eating, and then they go somewhere and they force themselves to vomit it up, right? They're afraid to. They're trying to meet a societal regime where they got, oh, they see these people in the magazines, they go, I want to be like the model, right? And a lot of times that's what it is, right? They're just afraid, and in turn they do so much damage to their own body, to their own organs, to their own mental health. And no matter what you do, a lot of times they don't come back from that.
Yeah.
You know, what do you think?
Well, with the Amish, they don't worry about that because they don't have the magazines, right? They all dress the same. They eschew worldly things like jewelry and hair. They always have the women always have their hair up and tied up. And I remember when I first started driving Amish, I was kind of wondering to myself, like sometimes women would hand me their baby and they would scream, or and children would stare at me like crazy. And I thought, they must think I look really funny because my hair's down and I don't have a cap on, right? And I'm not wearing a dress and I'm a woman. But they're not concerned with physical appearance. I've never seen any Amish concerned with physical appearance at all. So
Okay.
that's not why she would have that condition.
Can I ask you a question
Yeah.
related to that? What are your thoughts on that? On something like that your own from your own opinion?
With the Amish and the physical appearance?
Right, right, right. Because there has to be something that that's triggering that response and saying, I have to be this way, right?
Okay, I have an idea. I think that here, excuse me, my nose, just a second.
That's okay. That's okay.
I know we're on live. Anyway, the women are. I might get some backlash for saying this, but they're kind of second-class citizens with the
What?
Amish, right? They have their place, and the men are the leaders always.
Mhm.
So I think maybe for her it was, and she has 9 children. Okay, that's a lot of children. They're
Yes,
not allowed to use birth control. Their rule is have as many children as God gives you. And so I've met a family who had 20 children. I mean, literally, the woman had 20 children. Anyway, so I think maybe for this lady, it was a way of, Like, I can have control over this, right? I can control what I eat. I can be super thin. Like, it was a way of taking back what control she felt like she could, because she feels like
Okay.
fulfill this role and be subject to these rules and these men. And does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. And it's crazy that you say that, because as you were saying it, I remember some years ago, met a young lady, and we almost started dating until I started, getting to know a little bit more about her and realizing, seeing some of the things that she used to do. And I actually called her on it, because she had said something. I don't want to put it all out there because she may be watching right now. And I don't want to call her out or anything like that, but I just want to let her know that I was paying attention to her. And when she said what she said, I told her, I said, look, I get it. Someone took this control over it from you, and this is your way of reclaiming that back. You're just going about it the wrong way, right? You're like, I won't be controlled ever again. Look, I'm guilty of that. After being in a narcissistic, abusive relationship and having someone pretty much try to control me as a man, and coming from the place that I've come from, to have this woman control me the way that I did, yes, I was very defensive when I got out of that relationship. I was like, no one's ever going to control me ever again. So the slightest, after that, I tried a little bit, and this, you give me the slightest indication that you're going to try to control me, I'll drop you like a bad habit. Nope, you can stay over there. I'd rather protect me. I'd rather protect me and everything. And that was my way. Me doing things like that was my way of reclaiming my control, right? And that unpacks a lot of other things as well, right? That I had to go back in and address the abuse, the mental and verbal abuse, and sometimes she got real physical too. Okay, so I had to deal with those things, and I had to reclaim parts of my own humanity as well as my own manhood, right? Because as a man, no one wants to admit that you've been abused before by your significant other, but it happens. And so when you say that about that young lady, I can understand that, right? And I go, it's really not so different across the board right there. I get it. I have to have something that's mine,
Right.
you know. So yeah, let's dive deeper into some other stuff.
I
Help us,
agree.
educate us.
Okay, so and my next book is going to be a book where I'm talking about death, well, birth, marriage, and death. So this is kind of a preview into some of those stories. But a few years ago, another driver and I, we drove two loads. So we had two big vans going down to Arkansas, close to the Marion River. I think the town was called Clark, Arkansas. Anyway, I've only been down there once. But these Amish, they wanted to go to this seminar. And one of the Amish men in particular, I'll call him David, that's not his real name, but he wanted to learn to be a therapist because he felt like there was a need in his community, which there is still, for therapy, because people have things that they need to talk about. And the Amish aren't very good at that. But he saw that need. So he wanted to go down there and go to this training and this seminar. And his son, the guy who was, bloodletting, right, came down too. And they had some time off before the seminar one day. So they were like debating on what should we do. Well, the older people wanted to go fishing, and the young folks, they wanted to go whitewater rafting down the Marion River. So the young folks won. And David, he was like, okay, I'll go along, because I love my family and this is what they want to do. And we've never been to Arkansas and it's beautiful. So we'll do this. And I actually was thinking about whitewater rafting with them, and I'm really glad I didn't. I ended up staying back with a few of the women and the little children and just driving them up the mountain, for hiking. But anyway, so they had a couple of rafts and they went down this river. And the Amish, they're in their own world, right? And I mean, I wasn't aware of this either, but they weren't aware of how dangerous these rapids were. Nobody told them. They did have to sign a waiver, like, we won't sue you if something happens, right? They signed that waiver. But they really didn't get a good grasp on how dangerous it was. So they're going down there, and this driver and I were up on the mountain with these women and children, and we get a call. You know, and David's wife is with us, and we get a call, and they're like, well, both of the rafts had capsized, and he had to tell David's wife, he's like, David drowned. He didn't have his life jacket. He was a little bit of a rebellious guy. He had his life jacket on, but it wasn't zipped up, and he hit his head on a rock, and his life jacket fell off, and he drowned. And the other driver was a man, right? So he wouldn't hug anybody, but I've never hugged Amish before. But David's wife heard this news, and I know they don't touch each other and they're not huggy people, but I just started bawling my brains out, and I cried, and I held his wife. And she leaned into me and she cried on my shoulder. And the first thing that she asked was, do you think that David made it to heaven? And I said, of course he did. You know, no doubt in my mind, but in her mind, that was the most important thing, was that she just wanted assurance that he made it into heaven. Because that's what the Amish live for. They live their whole life with all the rules that they have, in the hopes that their works will get them to heaven.
Thank you for sharing that. Wow. Anybody have any thoughts on that? I want to say thank you again for being so open and vulnerable about that. You know, I got something in my eye. Because I'm listening to it, and I'm imagining them just going out to have fun, and all of a sudden, this horrible thing happens, and then when you said, how you broke down, and like I can definitely feel that, and then listening to how you hugged the wife, and that's a visual. That's a very intimate visual of that moment, and I want to say thank you for sharing that. Wow. Now, when we talk about dealing with grief, and all the things that come along with that, how is something like that celebrated? Is it celebrated? Well, I mean, because okay, and what I mean by that, so, and I think this is where sometimes the cultural differences, but even between the West and other countries, over in the West, in a lot of states and things like that, grief is not something that's celebrated. But now, if you go to places like Africa or Paris and things like that, right? They often say, we know how to grieve. And it's a celebration of life. It's a celebration of the life that you live with these individuals. So in Africa, and this is what I mean, and so Joe, you get a better idea. So in Africa, they have what you call a grief walk, right? So you start off in another country. So you start off in a place like Paris, and you hike up through the mountains, and you end up in Africa, up in the mountains somewhere, right? And what they do is that the people come in, they join in this celebration where they begin to play the drums, they play music, they dance, they don't stop moving. They do not stop moving. So you may be doing it for, 3, 4, maybe a whole week or something. You do not stop moving, right? Because grief needs to move through your body. That's the whole thing. And so it's getting it out. It's allowing it to move through you so you're not carrying it with you. And then afterwards, all of that, then you eat, right? But then the elders, the oldest son, will go on a grief walk. And what that means is that once it's already out, he's open to receiving a different connection. So he will go out, and as they like to call in Australia, he will go on a walkabout. He would go on a walkabout, which is just a spiritual walk to reconnect with the energy that's left behind from his loved ones. And so he goes out there, and he may be gone for, depending on his journey, depending on their journey, he may be gone for maybe 4 days or 4 months. But he keeps walking. He keeps walking, and he's having conversations. He's searching for that connection, and he doesn't come back until he has that. Now he comes back with that energy to be able to lead his family as a wiser version of himself through that grief journey. And so that's what I mean. Like, is it a celebration? Is something that's not taught? Maybe it's just a one-time thing. Like, that person's gone. You gotta keep moving, right? As you mentioned before. So what does something like that look like?
Yeah, but that's beautiful. I'm going to remember that. I love that.
Yeah, it's a
That's really
celebration.
amazing. So this man, he had friends everywhere. He was a little bit of a unique Amish person, just very lively, and he's completely embraced who he was, which is a lot of the Amish kind of suppress who they are, but he was just who he was, and he was proud of it, and so he had friends all over the country. So his funeral, it was in late March, early April, and it was a snowy day. And you can't plan a funeral, right? Because you don't know when people are going to pass on. So the Amish are incredible organizers. I mean, if you want a community organizer, they get some ex-Amish. They are masterful. But it was like over 1,000 people came to his funeral from all over the country. And driving through snow, driving hundreds of miles, even over 1,000 miles, coming from Ohio, all over the country. And the Amish community, they gather around. They went to his wife's house, and they clean her house top to bottom, clean her yard. They prepare enough food to feed like guests that come the day before the funeral, and then the funeral, they have 2 meals. And this community provides food for literally over 1,000 people. They open their homes to people who are coming from all over the place, and they really rally around the deceased loved ones and support them during that time. She was never alone. And then after all that, goes away, I went and I visited with her because we're friends. And she was happy. She showed me, she had so many cards and notes and scriptures and gifts that people brought her, honoring her husband and supporting her. And she held on to that, and that was such a strength to her. And even a couple of years after this happened, it was still sitting prominent in her living room, and she still referred to it. So that's how that was one example I saw of how they handle those things. And I call those little notes that she got and those little cards warm fuzzies. I said, oh, you've got like hundreds of warm fuzzies. There are things she can refer to when she's having a hard day missing her husband. She can go back and read those little notes about how wonderful he is and how wonderful she is and how God is watching over and protecting them. And I don't know, it melts my heart. It's super sweet.
So I like that. And because it refers to, from what you said earlier, and to hear you add that part in there is, it's like, yeah, that's the way it's supposed to be, right? There's no stopping point. Grief is forever. It just changes with you. You learn to carry it a little bit better as you begin to go and heal and begin to acknowledge the world that you now live in, right? Because once you see the things through the eyes of someone who has lost someone, your world changes. You have to adjust to a world with that person not being there anymore. You have to adjust to people um, that may leave, right? Because no one's going to be there forever. But you may find a few people that are, right? And it's normally the people that you think that's not going to leave you are the ones that leave you. So then, right there is right. It's a true thing. It's a hard thing. It's a hard reality, right? That most of us find out in the worst possible ways, right? And I share this little story with you. When my son passed away, in the beginning, there were so many people. Tony this and Tony that and Tony this. My work was upside down. Now, but after the funeral, all of these people that I've known before, and things like that, and they were always over at the house, trying to make sure I was okay. But after the funeral, I think there was only maybe 2, 3 people that came and checked up on me. And over a period of time, there was only one of my really good friends, and he was the only one that was there with me. So, and having to understand life from that perspective, because I was the one that people always came to talk to. So, but when they realized that I didn't have the mental fortitude to be able to do that for them, I no longer served a use for them. And so they eventually just walked away from it. It's like, oh well, he's doing his own thing, right? He ain't got time for me. I said, man, my whole life has changed, right? Because now I'm thrust back into a world where I'm alone again, and people never really understand that. And so when we talk about these things, I often look at those different the multitude of levels that go around in this 360 degrees, but then I begin to break the 360 down into like little sections and go, that's what, okay, now that makes sense. Okay, this makes sense, right? So it's the division between the division, right? That connects us. So if that makes sense. So yeah, I will get your thoughts on that as well.
And when you need people, they don't understand because they
Yeah,
need you so
is
much.
it like that in the Amish community? No, are they just together, or is it just one of those? Hey, it happens. Time to move on.
I think maybe with the men they treat them like that, but the women I've seen are very supportive of each other.
Okay.
And it's been really refreshing. Like in my life, I had all these kids, right? And at least in my culture, and the Mormons, they're supposed to be supportive of each other, but they're really not. And I suffered from postpartum depression hardcore with all 6 of my children. And I didn't have the support that I needed, but within the Amish, after they have babies, they are supported emotionally through that for like a couple months. The women support the women, and it is beautiful. They're really good at that.
Okay. So I love that.
Yeah, me
I
too.
love that. And the one part I did hear was how the men support each other. So I'm kind of getting a pretty good idea. Sometimes society don't teach us the correct way to be men.
So
This
what
is
doesn't?
society
Oh, yes,
doesn't teach us, even our cultures and things like that. And it seems like that we as men we have a lot more in common across the board, because after we as men we have kids and things like that. There's a brief moment of celebration, then we're going out, right? And we got to get back to work because we got to provide, we got to protect, and a lot of, I would say 96% of men hold their value in what we can provide and how we can protect our families, right? And we hold on to that like it's the precious gem, right?
Mhm.
I have a kid now. I have to go out here. I have to provide. I have to keep doing. I don't have time to be doing all of this. That's not my job. That's her job,
That's
right? You know what I'm saying? And I'm a man. I got to go back out here. I got to put the roof on the house. I'm gonna have to add another bedroom up here because now we got another kid. So now I got to make sure these kids got clothes and etc. Right? And then as men, we carry the weight of the world, and especially in combination of, okay, now that we have this, I have to put myself through more struggle, right?
yeah.
If that makes sense, right?
No, they do. Yeah. The Amish are a lot the same way, but they do have outlets. Like the men have healthy outlets. They love to hunt.
That was
And
going to be my next question.
they they like to go like I took a load of men. My favorite trips are when I have a load of Amish women, but that's very, very, very rare. Usually I have families or I have just a whole bunch of men who are going somewhere. Like I took a load of men to a grazing convention in Mississippi. And so
Mm.
that was their outlet. They got to go to this little convention, just a bunch of men with their female driver because they couldn't find a male, I guess. I don't know. But they do like to get together with other men and have that connection, whether it's shared over farming, or raising animals or hunting. Yeah, that's how they support each other.
Okay. So it is a lot like what I thought it was. There's really not a whole lot of cultural differences. Like we as men, we get together, we go on men's retreats, right? We'll go places where we can throw axes, where we can go hunt some stuff, go fish some stuff, right? And just kind of unwind and unpack a little bit to be able to talk amongst ourselves. So okay. So it makes a lot more sense now. It's just a matter of being able to open up the doors for those conversations to happen
Mhm.
and things like that. So okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, I want to talk about this one little part because I've always been curious about this, and of course, when you look at the TV or read the books, it paints a picture. But let's talk about Rumspringer.
What do you want to know?
Like, how does that come about, right? Rumspringer, because I know it's like a coming of age. The children who are growing up can go and be in the city and get to experience life from a different perspective, and some come back and some don't, right? So how does that come about? What is that all about?
Not all communities practice it. Like the one, well, the one where my farm is, they don't practice it. The most of the communities I drive for, they don't practice it. They're very low order. But for the ones that do, like the more modern ones, like you'll think Holmes County, Pennsylvania, or Shipshewana, or Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Did I say Holmes County? Holmes County, Ohio. Sorry. Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where there are a lot larger populations of Amish and there are a lot more modern Amish. They're big on practicing that. So when the Amish young people turn about 16 and a half, then they can choose to still live at home, but they can go get their driver's license. They can buy a car. They can drive the car. They can get a cell phone. They can dress like English people. They can go out and do the English. We're called English. For those of you who don't know, the Amish call non-Amish English. No matter what they are, what country they're from, if you're non-Amish and you speak English, you're English. So they can go to the movies and go bowling and do those things like our young people do. And then come like 19, 20, 21, when it's time to decide if they want to join the church and make that commitment and be baptized, then they can do that. And then they have to let all that go. But they want their young people to want to make the choice. Like they're not afraid to let them in the world so that they have that choice. But the lower order Amish are afraid to let them out in the world. So they don't. So
Now, this leads me to my next question before we start wrapping up, because I know you probably got a busy day today, and I appreciate this conversation being so open and sharing your experiences with us. Now, as someone who's English, how can we support our Amish brothers and sisters in their journeys, and what can we do to be better at connecting with them to show that we have so many similarities across the board? You know, like how can we have that dialogue?
So my best advice, and this is what I did to make friends with the Amish. I just went to their store. Iris brought me to their store and introduced me to them, and I buy their bread and their butter and their milk and their produce. And most of them are very friendly, open people. So if you live in their area, find them, have them build your house, just hire them, patronize their businesses, and they'll talk to you and they'll befriend you. They're some of the most kind people I've ever met.
Wow. Wow. You helped dispel a lot of things, but a lot of myths that we have, and you opened up my mind to just I want to meet more. I want to conversate with them. I want to build some sort of community or a connection with them and go, I know such and such, right? And laugh, and maybe I wouldn't be able to join the culture because I'm too spoiled, right?
Mhm.
I wouldn't be able to do that. But to partake in some of the things that they love to do, right? Um, and maybe even introduce the men to a person like myself and go, hey, I have a center over here. Would the men like to come and sit down and talk, right? And to be open and things like that. So my mind is constantly going.
Yeah, I
My mind
noticed.
is constantly going.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience? through your experience?
Well, so I hoard Amish proverbs, and then I have thousands of pictures I've taken of Amish country. Okay. And so I like to take their proverbs and attach it to a picture. So if I can just share a couple of my favorite
Yes,
proverbs.
yes, please, please.
Okay. So one is do unto others as if you were the other. And the second one is better to forgive and forget than to resent and remember.
I love that. That's good. I'm gonna throw that into my bag of knowledge, and so it helps. It just took me to a place to go and a lot of things that I've learned, right, and it just adds to it and validates a lot of it too, because I think a lot of those proverbs is so similar
Yeah.
to the things, and it's like wow, when you think about that, it's like we're not so different.
No.
We're not so different at all. Now, before I let you go, Haley, how can people find you?
Oh my stars! Somebody was getting after me yesterday because I don't have a website. But I'm on TikTok at Amish Taxi Driver, and I'm on Facebook at Haley Stress 6. And I write like stories that don't make it into my books, or maybe little snippets from my books. I have a Substack, and it's Amish Taxi Driver. So got some books on Amazon.
Nice.
I'm all over the place.
Okay. Did you have any copies of your books that you can show people with you?
That I can show people?
Yeah. Did you have any copies of your books that you can show people so people know what to look for? I mean, I do have your links down below, but I want people to know that if they go in there to search for those books, the ones that they can look out for.
Sorry, I disappeared, didn't I? Oh,
No, you're fine. You're right there.
Oh shoot! Well, you probably.
No, I can still see you.
Yeah, probably not the wrong side of me. Oh my gosh. This is
I'm done with you already.
live podcast. Oh my stars. This is
I'm
the
done with
first
you already.
Oh my gosh. This is the first one. And then this is the proof of the second one. I actually have a book of the second one, but I haven't a box. I haven't opened them. And then my third one, like I said, I'm going to write about birth, death, and weddings. So we'll talk a lot about what you and I have talked about in the next book. I just have to sit still long enough to do it, and it's becoming sunny outside. So,
I know, and it's beautiful too, right? So we just got done doing all the snow, and although next month is we're supposed to have more snow next month than we've had. So I'm looking forward to it in many ways, but not looking forward to it in so many ways as well, because it's going to get cold, and I don't want to deal with all of that. I want to go somewhere where it's sunny. I do, and I don't want to swim in the oceans because there's sharks in there.
What?
Yeah, I know. I'm not trying to be nobody's barbecue. I'm sorry. No, no. Okay, we're not doing that. I don't think I would taste good with salt water. I really don't.
You're so funny.
Now, my last question to you, Haley, would be: if you had a superpower, what would it be?
I don't know if it would. I'm glad God doesn't allow us superpowers, because I don't think we would learn. Because I would protect my children, or other children, from pain. But I know that would not be a healthy thing to do, because that's how we learn. But it's hard to watch people struggle.
But it is an amazing superpower, right? And I just want to add to that, and this is the reason why I say that, because sometimes we need to be the people that we needed when we were hurting.
Right.
So that's not a bad thing. And then I'm a huge advocate of protecting our children and our women. Okay, so when you say stuff like that, I'm right there with you. If I had that superpower to take that pain away for those children and those women out there that are struggling, I would love to do that, right? We as men, we just need to learn how to open up and be more vulnerable towards one another to be better versions of ourselves. But it takes good men to be able to do that as well, to mentor, fellowship, very extreme fellowship, and connection, right? And that's how we rebuild everything. But the women, and it's more natural that you would say that, because women are nurturers, right? And it's like the mama bear. You don't mess with the cubs.
No,
You don't
absolutely.
mess with the cubs. So I definitely understand that. So no, that's a beautiful superpower, right? And I, I wish you could have that superpower because there's so many children out there that need it. They need their protection. They need someone to love on them and speak life and over them as well. Now, now with that being said, Haley, I want to say thank you for joining us today. We must do this again as well. Whenever you get ready, because I know you're busy driving people all over the place and carrying on. We're gonna have to do a little miniatures TV series called Confessions of an Amish Taxi Driver.
Oh, I start.
Yeah. We're gonna have
The
to
whole book. Yeah.
we're gonna have to do that, right? Because I can only imagine we're gonna put a little GoPro on you, and we're just gonna let you tape everything that's going on, the craziness that happens.
You're
I
hilarious.
think that'd be cool, right? I know you've seen probably that show Confessions of a Taxi Driver and some of the stuff that
There's a
happened.
show called that?
There's Confessions of a Taxi Driver. There's a guy in
No,
actually a couple people in New York that drive around and they pick up
no.
these people, and it's normally late night where people are leaving the clubs, going to the clubs, and some of the things that happens will blow your mind. And it's confessions of a taxi driver. Because for one, it opens up the doors, and it's a proven fact. When you're in the cab with someone, you tend to talk to them
Oh, yeah.
about a lot of the stuff that's going on in your life. And sometimes things go a little bit crazy, right? And you be like, that's really happening right now. Like, oh, yeah, well, and it used to come on a long time ago. I think in the early late 80s, early 90s, it used to come on, and it used to come on every night. Whether if it still does or not, I can't say because technology and it has changed a lot. So, but yeah, we're gonna have to do that. I'm gonna have to talk to some people. We're gonna have to get you your own little TV show, Confessions of an Amish Taxi Driver.
That is hilarious.
I think it'll be amazing just to be a part of your world in that aspect of it, right? I think that'll just be amazing because some of the things that you be like, I told y'all. But you know what? Because you're on TikTok.
I am.
You should do something like that on TikTok. I follow you on TikTok.
Oh, I've been a little bit slow. Like I said, it's nice outside.
I know, but still, I think that would be cool. You just start up a little segment on TikTok called "Confessions of an
That's
Amish Taxi
good.
Driver,"
Yeah.
and just put little snippets up there, right?
No, that's
Like,
great.
I can believe this, right? But of course, get people's
Really good.
consent to be able to do it as well. You know what I'm saying? Let's not surprise them.
Oh, yeah. Well, I always change names and locations. I'm respectful that way. But yeah.
Okay. I think that would be cool, just to see you driving around doing stuff like that. Haley, I know. Go out today and enjoy the day. The sun is out.
Mhm.
Thank you again for coming on and having this conversation with us. And thank you everyone who's been tuning in on the other channels, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Rumble, all of those platforms that we're streaming across right now. And this is going to conclude this episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. And as always, if you're not tuning in on the YouTube channel, please go over and tune in on the YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. And we always having interesting conversations, and maybe it's not for you, but maybe you know someone that it can benefit from the conversation that we have. So do me a favor, share it with them. All right, and help us reach more people to normalize the conversations around death, dying, grief, mental health, and trauma, and all the messiness that comes along with that, so they know that they're not by themselves. Well, again, guys, help me welcome. Help me applaud my guests for being amazing and being open and sharing her experience and her in her travels. We're gonna see a lot more of her. But her information is down below in the YouTube channel. Go check her out. Get her books. Show some support. Tell her Tony sent you. And with that being said, Haley, thank you again. We're gonna see you guys in the next episode. All right, guys, enjoy your day. Peace.